All right, so like Ken said, hello, my name is Zach. If you don't know me, I'm a small group leader here at 11 a.m. I work with the 7th grade boys here. But just to reinforce Ken's announcement, how many of you guys do this for Samaritan's Purse? It's a really cool thing. If you don't do it, I encourage you to do it. It's really nice. And actually, you get to send a box of Christmas presents, all over the world to help these kids. I've been getting a lot of boxes sent to my house lately. I have a son, Ethan. He's like 15 months old. He's there in the back.
Woo, Ethan!
But, yeah. Woo! Yeah, but we've been getting a lot of boxes for him lately. With things like toys, a little baby gate to make a little baby jail out of our living room so I can't escape. Things like that. And they all need assembled. How many of you guys have had something sent to your house that needed assembled?
Avengers.
The Avengers? I don't know how you do it. Oh, Avengers Assembled. So, if you've needed to assemble something, it always comes with what? What always comes in the box? Little instruction, right? So, anytime you need to have something assembled, you get a little instruction manual that comes from the person who made the product, and it's expert advice on how to put this thing together. So anytime I get an instruction manual like that, what do you think I do with it? I don't throw it completely away, but I usually toss it off to the side and go, I got this, I can put together a baby gate or a toy. I'm a pretty smart guy, right?
Yeah.
So I usually do it, and I gotta be honest, when I try to assemble it without using that expert advice, without looking at the instructions, I usually put something on backwards, I usually skip a step, and then I'm asking, my wife, does this look right? Like, why isn't this, working smoothly like it should? So, it'd be smart to follow the expert's advice. Now, I don't do that with everything, right? So there's some things that I immediately go to an expert on. And I do that on things that are either really complex or really valuable. So, for example, like my car. If I was having problems with my car, I wouldn't just pop the hood open and start taking it apart and being like, I'll figure out what's wrong with it. It's no big deal. I got this. No, that's valuable. That's complex. I need an expert. I'd want a mechanic. Or something like with my health, right? Your health is important. If I was having a pain in my stomach or something, I could go to you and ask you hey, I got this pain right here. What do you think it is? But you're not a doctor. Just be an opinion. Or I could go on WebMD and look it up, and if I do that, I'm sure I'm going to convince myself that I have some rare disease that I can only get, if I've been traveling in the rainforest. That's not good. I want to go ask an expert opinion on that. So there's an area that we should seek an expert opinion on that we usually don't. And that's on this topic of, who am I? So it seems like a pretty simple question, right? Who am I? And, I could answer it, well, I'm Zach. Or, you could answer it, well, I'm, put your name here. But who am I is a lot more complex question than just your name. It involves, why do I exist? What's my purpose? Where do I belong? What's important about me? Why am I valuable? All of those things, all of those sub-questions that are really important and complex are wrapped up into that question of who am I? It's really the question of, or the idea of, how do I see myself? Who am I in every piece that's involved in me? So there's lots of opinions on that, right? So the answer of the question, who am I? There's all the people that you have in your life, right? There's your family, there's your friends, there's people that you go to school with that you're not friends with, teammates, people like that. If I went and asked them, hey, who is that person? They'd probably tell me your name, and they'd tell me things about you. They'd give me their opinion of who you are. And there's a whole world out there of people who don't know you at all, who they may not have an answer of who you are specifically, but they definitely have an opinion of who you should be, right? And I'm talking about, advertisements and movies and music, and there's a whole world out there trying to influence you, telling you, this is what you should like, this is how you should look, this is how you should act, and they don't even know you. And then there's our self-image, right? There's how we view ourselves, and that can be positive or it can be negative. And we usually look at, our performance or what we do or how we're doing with things to interpret that. So if you're getting really good grades in school, you're like, well, yeah, I'm a smart person, I'm getting good grades. Or if you didn't make that team, if you didn't make that sports team you tried out for, you're like, well, I must not be an athlete, that must not be who I am. So we have our own self-image. But whose opinion or perspective of who we are should we listen to? Well, just like we should have used the expert's advice to assemble that thing, or if there's something that's complicated or important, we should ask the expert or the person who made it. That's what we should do to answer this question of who am I? What we should be looking at is the way God sees us and the way God thinks about us is the most important thing to answer that question of who am I? Because He's who created us. In the Bible, it actually says that God knows us so well that He's numbered the hairs on our head. It says that God knew us before we were born. God knows you better than you know yourself. He is the expert on who you are. So this question of who am I, it's probably been asked since the beginning of time. It was definitely asked back when the Bible was written. And we can see an answer of how God would answer that question of who are you and who am I? And we see that in the book of 1 John. So 1 John was written by one of Jesus' disciples, John, and this is how he answered this question to the early church. So 1 John chapter 3, it says, "See how very much our Father loves us, for He calls us His children, and that is what we are." So if we ask the expert, if we ask God, who am I? His answer would be, you're a child of God. You're my child. So if we unpack that a little bit further, what does that really mean? So being a child of God, that means that we're loved by God. We were created by God. God thinks we're valuable enough to be considered His child. It means that He wants to spend time with us and He thinks we're important. That is who we are if you ask God, who am I? Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, if I'm loved and I'm important and I'm valuable to God, then why are there all these other opinions out there? Why don't other people think I'm important? Why don't they treat me, with kindness? Why don't I think well of myself? Why are there all these other opinions? Well, in John, it continues on and it says, "But the people who belong to this world don't recognize that we are God's children because they don't know Him." And I guess how I would summarize that is people who don't know God, or that general opinion coming from the world or people that we know, they're not the expert. They don't know you like God knows you, so their opinion is wrong. And we should be looking at how we can focus on the truth that comes from God's answer of who am I, which is a child of God. So what we want to do is just keep this focus of, how God sees us is the most important thing. So we want to amplify that message that comes from God, and we want to turn down all those other noises and opinions. So amplify. Amplify means make something louder, turn it up. So right now I'm amplifying my voice with a microphone. Who knows what this is?
A megaphone.
A megaphone. And where do you usually see this?
Cheerleaders.
Cheerleaders, right? So if they were trying to get your attention at a football game without this, and they were just yelling out to the crowd like this, would they listen to you, or would they listen to all the noise that's going on around them? All the noise around them. So when they use the megaphone, or when I use the microphone, I'm amplifying my message. And that's what we need to do with God's message to us, is we need to turn up His message, we need to turn up the volume of God's message of who we are in our lives, and we need to turn down all that other noise. So how do we realistically turn up the volume of God's message in our life? How can we do that? Yeah. We can spread it. We can pay more attention to it. We can really invite God into our lives more by spending time with Him. We can do that through reading our Bible. We can do that by coming to church and Ignite and learning more about Him. We can surround ourselves with other people who know God and know that God views us as a child of God and that we're important. We can also spend time in prayer and just really focus on inviting God into our life. So how do we turn down all that other noise? Well, we can identify the negative things in our lives that are kind of turning us either away from God's truth. So if there's people in your life who are a negative influence, or if when you're on social media, or you have another habit in your life that's really giving you a contrary point to what God's truth is, spend less time in that. If you can, avoid it altogether. We really want you to focus on how you can turn up God's influence in your life and turn down all those other voices. So we're going to break up into our small groups after a little time out here. And what we're going to focus on is, whose voice is loudest in your life right now? Is it the voice of God that's telling you you're a child of God, that you're loved, that you're important, you're valuable? Or is it all that other background noise that comes that tells you, maybe you're not that important. Maybe you need to seek value in other areas other than from God. So we're going to take a quick 2-minute time out, and then we're going to break up into our small groups. So we'll see you in a couple minutes.